Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. This is Jess, and I am extremely excited to bring you one of the most formative entertainers that we've all grown up watching.
Jess.
You know, it's true. He's a comedian, he's a writer, he's an author of his own memoir, Party of One. But let's face it, he is most remembered as one of the greatest MTV VJs of the 90s and early 2000s. Dave Holmes, I love you.
Thank you so much.
Now, I want to we're going to get into everything. I mean, your days at MTV, I want to hear about, everything you think about what's going on in music right now. But I want to really get into your journey, like how you landed this gig as a VJ on MTV during prime MTV. So I know you're from St. Louis, right?
I am.
And very quickly, I know that you initially moved to New York to get a job in advertising, but you were a true pop culture savant.
That was my thing. That was kind of my secret shame, honestly. I grew up loving music and TV and movies and popular culture. And I grew up in a place where, it was nice if you like that kind of thing, but there's no way for you to make a career in it. Those sorts of jobs are for other people. They're for people with skill sets that you don't have and whatever. I mean, it's never explicitly said, but that's kind of the subtext of everything. It's like, this is cute, but then, at some point you're going to have to grow up and get a job. So
a real job. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went off to college in Massachusetts and kind of, I worked in college radio and all that kind of thing. And I saw every show that I could and all that, but I tried to be a normal person and it really didn't take. Ultimately, when I moved to New York and I got a job in advertising, I thought that would be my thing because it was sort of creative-ish, although my end of it really wasn't. I was like a media planner. I was hoping I could eventually move laterally into copywriting, but that itself is very tough. And so my secret shame was that I was obsessed with music and pop culture. That was when I had too much to drink, that's what I would get real into. And I'd wake up the next morning and be like, oh, what did I do? Well, I talked about Jagged Little Pill for an hour and everyone got bored. Would be that would be my bad behavior. And so it was all in my bones to talk about this stuff and to perform and to write and all that kind of thing. And so I had a moment in 96, 97 where I was like, what am I doing? I'm in New York City. It's so hard to live here. It's very expensive. I'm living with my friends, but it's still kind of a miserable experience. What am I doing if I'm not doing what I love? If I'm in a city where I can do anything, what the hell am I doing? Why am I torturing myself?
You kind of say that it was one pivotal conversation that you had with your friend. Your female friend was saying to you, she basically was saying I can't wait to go to work in the morning. And you were like, really? You didn't realize that you were allowed to love what you do. And
that's exactly right.
It was so moving even till to be honest, I listened to the audiobook because
good.
Yeah. You did such a great job.
Recorded right here where I sit.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't want to be in a studio with a producer I've never met before, talking about these intimate stories. I was like, can I just please do this in my own studio by myself?
Very cool.
And they let me. So yeah,
that's awesome. So yeah, you tell the story how your friend was basically saying that she loves what she does, and you kind of took that sort of as a license to just see what opportunities would be out there for you in doing what you love.
Right.
And I guess I just want to backtrack for a second. I want to hear about your actual move to New York City. So did you graduate college? What happened?
I did. Okay. It took a minute, but I did. Yeah, it took 4.5.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah,
listen, today
between 4.5 and 5.
The upcoming class, at Harvard, they're going to be doing their classes on Zoom. You're fine.
I know. I have a niece who just got dropped off at her dorm, and it's I don't want to be a jerk, but it's
can you imagine? I know this is off topic. Can you imagine paying that tuition and they're not even going to be in class?
No, I know. And my understanding is that many colleges, kids were just I'm going to defer for a year because what's the point even? Let me go and work somewhere or something. Yeah. And colleges are nope, it's this year or nothing. But yeah, so I I had a final semester of my senior year, or my 5th year of college, where I had to take like 2 classes, and one of them was met like once a week. And so basically my final semester of college, I had loads of time to just fuck around. So I started looking for jobs in New York. I knew I wanted to be either in Boston or New York. And so I started driving down and interviewing for things. And I ended up at this job at Saatchi & Saatchi Advertising, which is a really groovy ad firm down basically in Soho. Like, I didn't study advertising. When I got the job, I ultimately ended up not being very good at it at all, but I was able to talk my way into it. And so I did that for a few years. But yeah, I moved to New York basically the day after I graduated college. And
you kind of tell this story how your first night in New York City.
Okay, this is true. This is wild. This is actually like before I moved. I had my apartment, and I started like, again, I had this like sort of, half-assed second semester of my senior year. So in the last month, because I had found this apartment, I just would like slowly piecemeal like move things down there and like sleep on the floor and just explore kind of. I didn't really live there yet, but I had it. And so I was with some older college friends who already lived in the city, and they were up on the Upper East Side, and I pretended to like be like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to go to sleep. And I just was like, I need to explore the city, and I need to do it on my own. And I don't know how to do that. And I'm a little scared, and I don't know the subway system at all. And I had a little money in my pocket. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to hop in a taxi. So I hailed a taxi, and I got in, and I was just like, take me somewhere awesome. Right. I think it was either take me somewhere awesome and gay, or just take me somewhere awesome. And it ended up being somewhere gay. But the guy took me to a place called the Monster in the West Village, which I believe, I don't know if anything still exists. But
Monster still exists in the West Village, across from the duplex.
Yeah, it's the one. But you can't go in it now.
No, not today.
Yeah. So he dropped me off there, and on the drive down, we had this long conversation about living in New York City. I did all the things you, by the way, are not supposed to do. Like, said I didn't know where I was, said I had just moved here. I basically revealed that I had just fallen off the turnip truck. So he could have, soaked me for all of the money that I had, but he didn't. He took me directly down to the West Village. And I remember he said, it's going to be hard for a few months, and then after that few months, you won't be able to live anywhere else. It's going to get into your blood, and it's going to be like you're addicted to it. And I was like, God, that's exciting. So he dropped me off at the Monster, where I just like went in and just started up conversations with strangers and met some people, and then I think we went to the duplex, and then it was just one of these nights where I moved into and out of like groups of people. I'm sure 90% of the people I talked to were like, who is this weirdo? But I met loads of people.
Yeah, like that's so fun. Almost like a tour of like New York City gay
Absolutely
bars.
A tour. Absolutely a tour. Yeah.
It's the best.
And then we ended up at a place called Club USA, which does not exist anymore and hasn't for years. But it was, I think it was a little bit further uptown. I'm not exactly sure where it was, but it was this ridiculous club, and I don't know how I got in. I'm sure I did not have the cover charge in my pocket at the time, but I went, and it was this big thumping, futuristic nightclub where on 3 levels, and then like it was stairs and stairs and stairs from the bottom level up to the top level. But then to go back down, I guess you didn't have to do this, but the fun way to go back down was called the K-hole. I did not understand the drug reference at the time, but it was a slide that went round and round from the 3rd floor down to the bottom. They would put you on a burlap sack and push you down. And it was just so exciting and so weird. And I was like, this is my life now. And I remember walking out the door. It was a Sunday morning. The sun was high in the sky. Joggers were jogging. And I was like, wow, I've really done it. And I hailed a taxi, and a taxi picked me up, and it was the same cab driver. And he was like, so what did you think? Never happens. And he remembered me, which never happens.
He literally was like, so what did you think?
Yeah, he's like, so? And looking back, it's like, how did that happen? That was ordained, Yeah, it was a wild experience, and I lived in New York for 9.5 more years, and that never happened to me again.
So during this period where the period of a couple of years where actually I guess it was like the early part of your 20s, you were working at this advertising company. You found a group of friends. You were living on the Upper East Side, and were you a fan of MTV?
Yeah, I grew up on it, and it was always the channel that was just on, you know. It was the first thing that I would go to.
Like, what were you watching? Like, do you remember, like, what shows you were into? I mean, The Real World, like, we can have a whole thing.
At the time, obviously The Real World, of course.
Yeah.
For me, the exciting stuff was 120 Minutes and like late night when they would trot out like the videos that were in like light rotation. I was a big music video guy. And then, you know, at this time I'm in my mid-20s, and it's around the time when you are supposed to outgrow this station and maybe go to VH1, which seems wild at the time. VH1 at that moment was very Jayhawks and Blues Traveler and Dave Matthews and like Indigo Girls, Sean Colvin, very, you know, 30s, where MTV was teens and 20s. So I watched them both. But yeah, MTV, the things that I watched that I really loved were obviously The Real World, you know, Beavis and Butthead, of course, Daria, of course. But it was just like there wasn't much I wouldn't sit through on that channel. But of course, yeah, I was a huge Real World person.
What were your favorite seasons of The Real World?
Okay. All right, well, let's get into it. I mean, the first is, you know, it cannot ever be duplicated. It was, I rewatched it recently. Oh, because I also have and we're perpetrating a season 2, but I did a podcast with Mike Doty of the band Soul Coughing, who ended up being my neighbor in the East Village and is also obsessed with The Real World. He and I did an episode-by-episode rewatch of the first season of The Real World and released it as a podcast. It's called True Story, which
that's amazing.
Recognize from season 2. Anyway, you can find it on wherever your podcasts are. We did that like maybe 5 years ago.
Amazing.
So the first one is amazing, and rewatching it, it's like you're watching a highbrow documentary. You know, each scene is given time to hit several beats. Like, issues are given, you know, thought and time. I feel like it's the last 7 totally guileless people in America. They don't know that they're going to be edited into characters yet, so they're very much themselves. When it's time for they didn't have a confessional yet, but they did do like individual interviews, and when it's time for those, they don't know where to look, and that's awkward, and it's totally fascinating. It really It feels much more like a real slice of life than the show does now. So the first, of course, is incredible. Let's see. Then we get LA. I had trouble with LA.
Kind of a snooze.
A little bit of a snooze, and also I think they overcorrected. They like really cast people who they knew were going to drive each other crazy. San Francisco, solid. I don't think we talk about Corey as much as we should. You know, we always talk about Pedro. We always talk about Puck. You know, Judd and Pam are still on the speaking circuit. But Corey, well-meaning, young liberal gal, is like, she was a good character. And I wonder what became of her frequently.
Then you have like Miami, Boston.
Then you have Miami, which I enjoyed watching, but I don't think it's aged well.
It had Dan Renzi.
It had Dan Renzi, who, by the way, was just on the Rachel Maddow show. He's a nurse now. Did you know about this?
Oh, my God.
He's a nurse now, and he came to New York to be on the front line of COVID. This was so like in March, Rachel was like, you know, we found a nurse to you know, record his, you know, to do a video diary of the experience and whatever. And then the video diary starts, and it's fucking Dan from Real World Miami, who better to do a video diary? He was born for it, right?
That's so funny.
So the whole thing was a little bit performative, but still good on you, Dan, for fighting the good fight. I hope he's okay. But yeah, like, I don't love Flora, you know. I don't love Melissa. I did a reunion special in Vegas, and they were one of the seasons, and Flora and Melissa were just no fun.
Oh, that's cool. You got to meet a bunch of these people because you hosted.
I did get to meet a bunch of these people. We were all in Las Vegas. We had to do a quick run, like a real rehearsal. It was of course at the Joint at the Hard Rock Hotel. Where else would it be? And so we did our little run through, and then Cyrus from Boston was like, "I got us a party van," right? So he gets a party van, and it's like, and Cyrus from the Real World, it's years after his season, but he's still the mayor of wherever he goes, and he gets us in all these clubs and whatever. Mm-hmm. That was totally surreal. Boston, I liked.
I loved Boston.
Yeah.
I've rewatched Boston more than any other season, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, because I loved Genesis was like huge for me.
Genesis,
like,
sure.
Huge. Yeah, I love that entire cast. Montana, Elka the Virgin. I mean,
Montana was troubled.
I love Montana. It's so good.
Yeah. Did she get like a 6-year-old drunk or something? What was the story? Or she's been drinking and she shows up at a daycare or something.
Yes, because they worked at an after-school center.
Right.
They worked at an after-school center, and I believe she showed up drunk. Yes.
And she had a disgusting boyfriend.
Yeah, his name was Vaj or something. Remember? Vaj?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I just remember him being like absolutely repulsive in every way. I will admit to having had a crush on Sean, because he's very, very Midwestern, very apple pie,
Sean
very
Duffy.
thick. Sean Duffy. Now, of course, he's an appalling Trump-supporting Republican state representative, which is I don't love. I like him.
But remember, remember Genesis was like on whatever it was, like America Online. It was like AOL, like old, like dial up, and she was like chatting. She was just looking for gay friends, and she was like chatting with, you know what? It must have been like Prodigy, like I think even older than AOL, and she was really drawn to trans people. And like that was the first time it's got to be the first time that there were like trans people on MTV, I would think.
Definitely. Yeah. She was again years ahead of her time. Then
Seattle and Hawaii.
Seattle, I love. Seattle might be my favorite.
Ooh. Why? So why is that your favorite?
I mean, we have to talk about David. I think the hottest guy in real world history. Mm-hmm. I know him in real life. He is like a big sales guy. He's like a sales and partnerships guy at The Onion. He's got this like big fancy media job now. So we like have coffee once in a blue moon. And he looks fantastic. He's married now. He's got a couple kids. Nathan, I know, is like a big recovery guy. So he's like, he runs like a rehab camp in the wilderness somewhere. He also has held up astonishingly well. Steven, depth for days. Just such a weird, multi-layered character, so deeply in the closet that he will throw your teddy bear into a body of water. Irene went to Holy Cross, where I went to college. She only was there for like a year, and we missed each other. But we've talked about it since then. I've bumped into her in real life. She lives in New York now. Pistol. Really?
Yeah.
Love Lindsay.
Yeah, and it was cool. It was that Seattle was cool because I think they had the coolest job working at that like radio station.
Yes, that absolutely suits them, right? Like that is the kind of job that a real world cast should have. And I think Lindsay still works in radio. But I love that one. I love I love David and the casting director having a relationship.
Yes,
you get a rare look behind the curtain. That's kind of like shades of what would become of Real Housewives of Atlanta, with Candy having the relationship with the producer. Also, I remember that being the people of Seattle did not take kindly to the Real World being in their city, as I recall. So there was like, if you saw where they were filming, the thing to do was like hold up a strobe light. So in the background or on the walls of certain shots, you can see flashing lights. And it looks like the police are there, but it's the people of Seattle.
Interesting.
Keeping it real. So
you're a huge fan of MTV, and describe like, how did you find out about the Wanna Be a VJ contest? Like walk us through, like, how did you find out about the contest, and then like how did you get into it?
Okay, well, I was fucking around at my job, which is what I did, and I remember it was a Thursday. And on Thursdays at the time is when the Billboard charts were released. And so I used to go every Thursday to Billboard.com and see what was number one. And which at the time was All My Life by Casey and JoJo, this being early 98. And there was a news story that just said MTV holding open call for new VJs. And I was like, okay, I'm doing that. Because they had just moved into the big studio at 1515 Broadway. So I had passed that a million times. And again, like MTV actually at the time was, I was still hooked on it. And we were a few months away from it becoming a network for 13-year-olds. At the time, it was still kind of a network for 18-year-olds. And I wasn't either of those things. I was 26 or whatever I was. So I was a little bit too old to be into it. But it still felt like, the Wonka factory. And I really wanted to be in it. So that Monday when the open call was, I called out sick for work. I stood in line. It was the day after Easter. And I had spent Easter with my friends. We had no money. And so we took the Staten Island ferry back and forth because it was a nice day. We wanted to get a view of the city. And I set my alarm for like 3:45 or 4 o'clock or something on that Monday morning, because I figured if I'm going to go, like, I'm not going to be a huge character. So if I'm going to go, I need to get there early when the people who I would be talking to would have the patience to talk to somebody who's not like going to bowl them over with, charisma and pizzazz and all that kind of shit. Like, I felt like I'm the normal guy, and the normal guy's got to get there early because he's not going to pop at 3 p.m. They're going to be tired. So I went and I remember, okay, the thing that haunts me is that I set the alarm for crazy, crazy early. And if you've ever done that where you're feeling ambitious and you're like, I'm going to get up and go surf, or I'm going to get up and go for a long run or a bike ride or whatever, and you set your alarm for a crazy hour, and then that alarm goes off at that crazy hour and you're like, the person who planned this for me the night before is an idiot. I'm never going to do this. This is stupid. I'm going to sleep for 2 more hours and then go to work. In my head, I remember looking at those giant red numbers and just thinking, like, what I am planning on doing is so stupid, and I'm so tired, and I should just go to work like an adult. And then I thought, like, but I suck at and hate my job, so I'm going to do this. But it was very close. It haunts me how close I came to rolling over and going back to sleep.
Wow.
Because I truly do not know where I would be in life if this thing had not happened to me. It has afforded so many opportunities for 20 plus years. It's crazy. So anyway, so I stood in line. They started letting people in around 8:30 or 9. I remember seeing Jesse in the line, the guy who eventually won, because it was like a snaky, like Disneyland line. And so we kept passing each other.
Did you ever have interact? So this is Jesse Camp, which, like, I mean, we could do a full 30 minutes on Jesse Camp, but we'll like spare the listeners. But what was your impression of this guy?
Well, I thought I was like, well, she's gorgeous first, because it was dim. But then I just, I had headphones. I was really not trying to interact with anybody. I had been on enough auditions to realize, like, don't get yourself psyched out by all the other people who are there. Just like stay in your zone and whatever. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of interaction, but I did hear, like, his voice really carried. And so anytime he was talking to people, I was like, okay, that's the kind of big character that this thing is going to attract, who I'm going to kind of stand out from, by not, performing in that way. So he made an impact. He made an impression on me for sure. Went up. There were 12 audition stations, all against the windows overlooking Times Square. Answer a couple questions about yourself, read a cue card, whatever. And then I got sent to another studio where, like, the other 11 people that I came in with, everyone kind of went to the exit. And I was like, oh, I think I just got a call back. Like, I think this is...
And, like, what kind of questions were they asking you? Or were they asking you questions, or did they just want to see your camera presence?
Both. I mean, they just, like, you had to talk about the music that you like, and,
and who were at the time, who were you a super fan of? Like, at this time, and as you were about to embark on this insane journey at MTV, who were your artists that you were obsessed with?
My big ones at that time were Ben Folds 5. They had 2 albums out by then. I listened to them so much that my roommates had to hide the CDs from me, because they were I would always put them on. So they'd be in the microwave. They'd be, in the whatever rag drawer. So them. Also, Whiskey Town had just put out an album called, I think, Stranger's Almanac. That was Ryan Adams' first band.
Yes.
And
yes.
yeah,
Whiskey
so
Town.
I was really into
I remember
them.
that.
Yeah. So yeah, I was like real music nerdy. So I was into them, like the old 97s, alternative country kind of moment. I was really feeling. So those were my big ones. And then also in my head, I was like, if I name a halfway obscure artist, then I'm going to stand out from the rest of this crowd as somebody who knows music a little bit, because I didn't get the impression that everyone around was much younger, and I felt like they're not going to mention the artist that I might. So it's important.
And didn't you have like such an encyclopedic knowledge of music that you were embarrassed of this?
I was.
That you knew so much that you even threw a question. Like there were questions that you deliberately answered incorrectly because you didn't want to seem like a psychopath,
or just didn't answer. Yeah, I just didn't answer a few because well, I mean, the music trivia questions, I got to say, were not crazy hard. It's just that, again, once we got down to the final 5 or 6, it was me and a bunch of 19-year-olds. And I was like 26. And that's, that doesn't seem like a huge difference. But when you are that age, it seems like a huge difference. So if they're asking 19-year-olds questions about like U2 or whatever, the 26-year-old is going to get it. But it was also things were pitched to me, really, like all of that kind of thing was sort of stuff that I could answer. So it wasn't so much that I was like killing it, but it's just that I was, relatively speaking, killing it. And it looked weird. And I still have this strange Midwestern Catholic thing of like, it's embarrassing to be as into this stuff as I am. So even trying to get this job, like on live TV, I was still ruled by that dumb mindset, which is something that I didn't even think about until years later.
And when you were growing up, so obviously like you're more of a rock guy than like a like freaking out about Britney Spears.
Right.
When you were growing up, did you always idolize like the rock stars over, like what was your feeling on like Madonna, Janet Jackson, Cher, like pop queens?
I loved everything. Yeah, I'm not really any particular kind of person. I listened to everything. I loved Top 40 radio. Also, Top 40 radio in the 80s was objectively awesome. It was great and diverse.
Totally.
And it was like there was good, pop diva music and great alternative stuff. Like I worked at like an alternative station in high school that would play the Replacements and the Smiths and the Cult and the Cure and all that kind of stuff. And I loved that too. Yeah, I kind of took it all in. There wasn't much that I didn't appreciate,
And actually, I'm curious, like, were there any, when you were growing up, like, did you have like a formative concert that you attended that just like blew your mind in terms of live music?
Wow. Well, my first one ever was Duran Duran, 1984.
Amazing.
The Seven and the Ragged Tiger tour. It blew my mind. I loved that just because I was there, and it was like, I was, whatever I was, 13, 12. And, I mean, just the thing of being there like heightens everything so much. It just blew my mind. And the video for the Reflex came out like 3 months after I saw that concert, and it's a live one from that tour. And I think I just thought that their set was at what just was the venue where I saw this show, because there are all these light up pillars and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's in St. Louis. It didn't I was too young and dumb to know that you tour with a set and you build it everywhere you go.
Yeah. So the Wannabe a VJ contest, so you got a couple of callbacks, and then take me into just like the final round where it's you and Jesse, and it's live television. Like you had what was the deal? You had to like call out sick from work because this is now going to be live and airing.
This was okay. So they said they would call by midnight on Tuesday if we were in the top, if we made the top 10. So and my roommates at the time were both away for work. I had the place to myself. I had a bottle of wine, pizza, a stack of movies, and I sat there with the phone in my lap, and they called at 11:55 or something like that and said I was in the top 10. So then I had to show up. Then I had to call in sick for the rest. I had to be honest about what was going on at work.
You eventually had to like come clean. Like now you're like,
yeah, totally.
Because you didn't know they were going to air like the actual reveal was going to be on live TV.
Yeah, I knew that they were going to, wring some publicity out of it, but I didn't think it was going to be like fully on TV. It was. So I called out for the rest of the week. I was not, again, very good at my job, so they barely missed me. On that Wednesday, they narrowed us down from 10 to 5. Like there were a series of challenges that we had to do. We had to like interview Chris Kattan. We had to talk about what the song is the theme song of our life, which I think mine was "Philosophy" by Ben Folds 5. The musical guest for their first time ever on MTV, NSYNC. This is on YouTube.
Oh wow!
I'll send you the link. And
wait, did they perform "I Want You Back"?
They did.
Or yeah, I've seen this like 10,000 times.
Yeah.
Oh, and so you introducing them, that was part of the contest?
No, we weren't that. We didn't introduce them, but we were the audience. There were like 10 of us inside. So the old guy bopping around amid a whole bunch of younger people,
amazing.
That would be me. So then they narrowed us down to 5. And then Thursday and Friday on MTV Live, which was like their 1-hour live show before TRL, they had us on and we would have to do a couple challenges, and I don't really remember what they were. The whole thing is honestly a blur. Like I was operating in shock. So I have it. My family videotaped it. I had it put onto DVDs. At some point I will watch them, but I just haven't really gone back to watch them yet because it's a lot. And then, so then it culminated in like a 3-hour live Saturday event. And I was supposed to be at a college friend's wedding that day. I had to call and cancel. They, at the reception, were at the bar watching, apparently. And there were all these sort of like challenges and things. Like you had to, Pauly Shore was there and you had to be at like a VMA's podium with him doing banter, or you had to read a news teleprompter or whatever. And then it was sort of one by one, people got eliminated, and then it came down to me and Jesse. And in my head, I had already prepared to lose to him. I was like, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to meet as many people as I can, but they're looking for a character that I am not. So I'm going to lose well. I'm just going to do my best to lose well, right? Just try to put myself in a position for some kind of job so that I can quit this advertising job that I am not meant for and write for them or be a production assistant or something, which is where being 26 or 27 really helps, because like,
you know how to network.
You know how to network, and you also know like a good thing when you see it. If you're 19 and this thing happens, you're just kind of wide-eyed and just looking at all the shit.
What was the deal with Jesse? Was he like, how old was he? 17, 18?
He was 18.
He was 18, and I guess he had like aspirations of being a musician, which honestly, last night in bed, I did a quick glance at his Instagram, and he seems to be fucking thriving. He actually looks
He's
good.
doing all right.
Yeah,
he
like
does look good.
He's still in music. He's got like a scruffy little beard, and like he looks exactly the same, but like mature. Yep. And like I was like, wow, good for him. Like he's out there, seems to be like in music and like doing it. So
yeah.
But was he just like strung out on drugs? Like what was? Do you know what the deal was?
I don't know, and I will. I really don't know. We didn't interact a ton. Like we would occasionally like go and we would have to travel together for spring breaks or whatever. And so we were like around each other a ton, but we didn't have a whole ton in common. So we didn't off camera hang around a bunch.
Yeah.
Also, there was like an 8 or 9 year age difference, and a significant one because we were both young. And so I gotta say I don't really know. I don't know if it was drugs or if it was just, he started playing a character and kind of just got stuck that way or what. Mm-hmm. But he was a trip.
I mean, listen, it's 2020. We're still talking about this guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
almost the equivalent of like the human version of a one-hit wonder.
Totally. He turned up recently on a couple episode of Harmontown, Dan Harmon's podcast.
Oh,
which they used to perform. They used to it's Dan Harmon and a couple other people, and they play D&D for a live audience, and it's like he's got his tribe of fans, and one of them knew Jesse Camp and brought Jesse Camp along, and so he kind of makes a cameo on a couple episodes within the last year, and then they called me and they were like, oh, you should come and be on Harmontown. And I was like, I don't play D&D. I know Dan in real life, but like, I'm not the kind of person you would ask to do that show. Like, what's going on? So I asked a super fan friend of mine what's been happening on the show recently. And he's like, oh, they found Jesse Camp. It's like, okay, they're trying to perpetrate like a
reunion or something.
An on-mic reunion, which,
amazing.
Yeah. But it's just like, I would love to see him, but not in front of an audience,
Right.
It'd be weird.
So you've never watched, were you saying that you've never watched the tape of you, quote unquote, losing?
Well, I've seen the clip where they announced Jesse, because that was part of the intro to my first show that I ever did. Because they announced me as the host, and then that was part of the intro package for like the first season of the show. And I didn't know at the time that I could be like, can we not do that? Like, can I not be the guy who lost? I was just so happy to be there that there were two things I didn't know. One, that you can say no to things. Like if they try to put a shirt on you that you feel ridiculous in, you could be like, I don't want to wear that. Can I wear something else? And also, like, they want your ideas. I wish that I had been bolder about pitching ideas, because it was a network that was run by 27-year-olds. So like, if you have an idea and you sit down with like the super duper boss in production, he's 31. And they're cool and they'll work the stuff out with you. I look back and I'm like, God damn it, why didn't I pitch a bunch of dumb show ideas? Because maybe one would have gotten made. But I was so lucky to be there. I didn't want to rock the boat in any way.
So like so ultimately he wins, but because you clearly are extremely savvy and extremely bright, and you also have the actual skill and talent to do this job. You've got a writer's brain. Like, you had all the right ingredients. You managed to actually do exactly what you said: network, make friends, make connections. Right. And what happened? They just called you and said, "Hey, do you want to do?" Okay, so how did you actually like? So
after Jesse wins, they like shuffle him off to another studio to do like a press conference. They got the giant oversized Ed McMahon check for $25,000, which I was like, could use that, but whatever. And so he's off, and then in my head I was like, don't have any feelings about this right now. Just go to the rap party, plaster a smile on your face, have a couple of beers. Like, all of the people who you've been hanging out with this week, like you had a nice experience with, so get their business cards and do not let them forget you. Just like, so I did that. So I made the rounds at the rap party. I stayed for maybe an hour and a half or something. And I just got a stack of business cards, and I was like, in my head, I thought, I'm also going to call in sick on Monday, the following Monday. I was essentially on a leave of absence.
Are you still working at that advertising job?
Pardon me? Am I still? Do they expect me back?
Are you still working? Yeah. Do they still think you're coming in next week?
Yeah. Believe me, they are delighted that I no longer work there. So you see, that Monday I just went through my stack of business cards and was like, I'm just going to try and get meetings. So I did, and again, like the higher up people, I think. They were youngish themselves. They're all music and TV nerds. So they felt a kinship with me. They wanted to help me out a little bit. And so it got, so I just took a bunch of meetings. And then I got a job then writing on weekend specials, which was like sort of a part-time-y job. So like weekend countdowns and stuff like that, I would help write. And then I just kind of slowly transitioned into an MTV job.
At this moment when... after this VJ contest had ended, where was TRL? If we say it peaked in 1999, 2000, I guess, like, how mammoth was TRL at this moment?
Well, it didn't exist yet, because it was
okay.
So that show was a merging of two different shows. So there was a thing called MTV Live, which was in the studio. It started when they moved into the big studio with the big windows, and it was Carson. Actually, I think the main host was this guy Toby Amies, a British guy. It was him and Ananda Lewis, and then Carson Daly was kind of the utility guy, and so that was their live show. Then in the summer of '98, they started doing a daily countdown show called Total Request. based like it was supposed to recall Total Recall, the movie, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
this daily countdown show was called Total Request, and then that summer, in the autumn rather of '98, when we moved back to New York to be in the studio, they just put MTV Live and Total Request together and made it Total Request Live.
God.
So it
And Carson
did not exist.
That's so interesting. So Carson, I believe, was the host of that Total Request show.
He was, yeah.
God, wow. So you saw this merger. You were there for the birth of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. The first few, there was no in-studio audience, I don't think, for the first couple of weeks. And kids didn't yet know to congregate under the window. And then also the stuff that was being counted down, like the teen pop thing was just starting. So the big videos when I got there were like Fastballs, The Way, and Closing Time by Semisonic, and things like that. Like it was the kind of the very end of the alternative radio thing was happening, and we hadn't figured out what the next thing was going to be. And it was early in like maybe Tearing Up My Heart, or maybe I Want You Back from NSYNC started doing well on Total Request, and like a Backstreet Boys song or two, and then it was like, okay, the next thing is boy band.
Is here, yeah.
Yeah.
And was your first big project at MTV like the Beach House, or did you first do TRL?
It was the first thing that I did. The first thing that I did after the contest. It was just before the summer programming thing was about to start. It was just before Memorial Day weekend. So Toby and Ananda and Carson were all at the Beach House filming launch weekend stuff. And, the super duper highest up production guy, who's 32, comes to the set and is like, hey, we need a host for the live show today. Can you do it? And like, I had never done live TV. I had never been on TV in any way, really. I was a contestant on a couple game shows. But it was a 90-minute live show with not even a countdown to like fall back on. It was really just like you take callers and you interview a couple people and whatever. And so that's the kind of place it was. Like I was 100% unproven, not even really on contract yet, but it was just like, oh, we need someone to like be the face of our network for 90 minutes on live television today. Can you do it now? And so that was, I did it, and I didn't have a panic attack, and I fell in love with it immediately.
And so what are the highlights from like working at the Beach House? Like, was that in Seaside Heights? That
first one was in Seaside Heights, yeah.
So like, what are those like?
Yeah, they're weird. First of all, this is a thing that I learned. You don't live there. You don't live in the Beach House. I just assumed, when I thought about it for 2 seconds, it was like, of course the VJs don't live inside the actual Beach House. That's stupid. But at the time, I really showed up like, where's my bedroom? It really did.
Am I going to be like sleeping next to Carson?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I wasn't. It's crazy because they cram each day with stuff. You're constantly making content, whether it's like live stuff or like bumper things to play in between shows or whatever. It's just constantly moving, and every aspect of the house is like built for TV. Like you can film anywhere. Any unused space is like, they put your wardrobe in, or that's the makeup room or whatever. Everything is very practical. It was run really efficiently. And then we all stayed at a motel nearby.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course we did.
So I want to go deep on Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Britney. So
okay. Teen
pop explodes. Now, you were one of the first people to interview Britney Spears when she was first starting.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Like, what was your impression of her? What did you make of it?
I didn't have a whole lot of behind the scenes interaction with her. I met her on the set and we talked, and then she went away. And part of it is because I was 27 and she was 16, and it's just weird for people in those age groups to mix at all. And also it was just, she had a lot to do. It was clear she was, it was a big deal anytime she came through because it was huge for her career, and you want to get everything exactly right in those early appearances. And I remember talking to her, and all of the teen pop people were media coached. You could tell that they they were professionals at knowing exactly what to say to be uncontroversial or to not turn anybody off or whatever. But where the groups all had each other, she was very much alone, and it really stood out how kind of trained SEAL she was. Not to, I don't want to like diminish her at all because she's very talented, but it was like for any of the interpersonal stuff, it was very, it felt like, I don't know, I'm not sure I know who this person is, but I'm not supposed to. Like it's, you're trying to craft a persona at that time and whatever.
Are you surprised that now, all these years later, over 20 years later, how relevant these people still are? I mean, particularly Britney, but also Christina is still, like, at that time, did you think these people will have one album, maybe two at max? Like, did you think that, I mean, like, were you able, did you have the foresight that, like, were you able to, like, pick out and be like, oh, this guy Justin Timberlake eventually is going to be the Michael Jackson and take off?
See, I thought it was going to be JC. I really did.
That's what everyone thought.
Justin's hair was just too extreme for my taste. Nobody really jumped out in the Backstreet Boys for me. They were all, great and everything. But at that time, we also had Joey McIntyre and Jordan Knight coming back from, 8 years before, which felt like an eternity. So like anything could happen. And, Madonna was and is still relevant. So I don't think I ever thought anyone was like a flash in the pan. I knew Mandy Moore was going to go the distance in a million ways. And
tell me, how did you know? How did you know that?
No, just because she was so. I mean, she had real, genuine personality and drive and talent and poise, and it just I never felt like she was going to be the number one teen pop star, but it definitely felt. I mean, I can't say that I knew that This Is Us would be coming, but it was like right. I felt like she had a multifaceted career in her.
Yeah. Like going back to Britney, because you met her, sort of like day one of her career. Like, are you surprised even now? Like, what's your take on, the whole Free Britney movement and just the machinations behind her? It's
pretty fascinating. I wish it weren't so fascinating because it really feels terrible to watch, and yet I do. The thing where she was supposed to announce the latest Vegas residency.
Yes.
And she just like popped up out of the pyramid and then walked down and got in a car and left. That was fascinating to me. And I know, and I feel bad because I know that it's because she is not in a place to be, performing or talking to people or whatever, but it's, I can't stop watching. I feel bad. And, the Instagram where she, burns her gym down is my favorite movie of the year so far. It's the thing of like, she's wearing yellow today. That's because yesterday I told her to wear yellow if she's in trouble or whatever. It's like I don't know exactly what to believe, but I do think she wants out. And didn't she just say that the other day? I saw a headline. I didn't read the post.
I don't know. I sort of am from the stance when I see all that, I think a lot. I take 90% of it as being bullshit, unless it's something that they explicitly say. If it's a video of them talking, I think a lot of the Britney stuff is a lot of conspiracy theories.
Oh, sure. Of course. But I also do think that she wants out. I would want out, She's 37 or something now. Like she should be able to leave her house if she wants to, probably. It's sad.
I also want to talk about being gay at MTV. Mm-hmm. Now, you were at this time you weren't out in the late 90s and very early 2000s. You hadn't like publicly come out.
I mean, I was out in my life, but I had not done like an interview with a magazine to say I'm gay, because that's the way that you had to do it in those days, and like they did not care about me at all. Right. And that's fine. I'm not going to sell magazines. But, the frustrating thing was at the time, you did need their help if you wanted to say that, if you wanted to come out, Now, of course, you just do it on Twitter and you're.
So so everyone who worked there knew you were gay. Like, were there other, I know John Norris is gay, but were there, but he also wasn't like, it wasn't a thing, like, at all.
No, and he was very out in his life, but not publicly. Well, I mean, it's such a strange thing, having to make any kind of statement about your sexuality to the press in order for it to be known is just a weird thing. And I definitely could have been bolder about just like saying shit about myself on the air. But again, I didn't want to rock the boat, and it was a strange thing. If it had happened now in a time of social media, or even if we had personal blogs on the MTV site or whatever, I like to think I would have been more out. I don't know. It's just it was a weird thing at the time, but I never felt like anybody was trying to keep me in or anything. It was a very diverse and progressive place. So yeah, I never felt strange or anything. And I brought male dates to things, but it's just like, it just didn't register.
Did any of the talent, like the stars of the day, did any of them know that you were gay?
I don't know that we mixed enough. The only people okay, so let's talk about like who was popular at the time on MTV.
Yeah.
It was the boy bands who like were nice, and when they were on set we had a nice time hanging out. But like I don't want to go to a club with,
Chris Kirkpatrick.
Right. Yeah. That's just not, that's not, and I didn't, I was not a Carson or an Ananda or whatever were very cool about being like, hey, let's go to this place after the show or whatever. I felt very awkward doing that, so I never really did. And then it was like, your Scuzzy, your Kid Rock and Fred Durst and whatever, who, again, I was like, I don't know if I have a whole lot in common with them. The one rock star friend that I made while I was there was Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20. He and I really hit it off. And so, yeah, so we would bum around the city and do karaoke and shit like that together. He is a terrific, terrific guy. And, I was out to all of my like friends. But yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of like rock star pals.
And was there talk or gossip at MTV about if any of the boy band, because it wasn't just NSYNC and Backstreet, it was 98 Degrees, and like there were these like third and fourth string boy bands. Was there gossip at that time about one, just the odds are one, at least one of these 15, 20 guys has got to be gay? Like, was there that like water cooler gossip?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, we would, when we were drinking together, we would have, there would be speculation and whatever, but nobody knew anything. And that was super duper by design. Like, again, they are not only media coached, they are watched like hawks in their personal life in those early years. Cause, if something made it into page 6 or whatever, they would be screwed. Yeah. But yeah, and again, I thought it was JC.
Everyone still thinks he's gay.
Yeah, I have heard.
But he's like not. He's like strangely not. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, unless he's like truly like not out. Like as far as I can tell, like he's not. But okay, so speaking of JC, isn't it shocking that in 2020 Lance is the most relevant guy of those boy bands? He is in 2020 the most relevant. He's probably the second most relevant next to Justin Timberlake. Isn't that fucking wild?
It's pretty wild. And I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, I mean, I participated in the documentary that he did about Lou Pearlman.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, it was interesting. And he's done a lot of producing work. And yeah, I mean, they're all staying busy. Joey Fatone is not to be sniffed at. He's hosting TV shows and all that kind of thing. And the rest are all doing fine. But yeah, no, it's he is still very much in the public eye in a way that I did not see coming.
Yeah. And were you surprised that Carson himself went on to have a huge career? Like he eventually got his own late night show at NBC and then moves on to the Today Show. Like that had to have been wild to watch as well.
Yeah, definitely. Although, I mean, he really, there's a guy who knows how to assert himself. Like his mom worked in the world of TV. He came up in radio. So by the time he got to MTV, he, like, where I was very timid about, asking for things or pitching things or whatever, he was like, nope, the next thing for me to do is pitch this, attach myself as producer to this. Then that's how you get me to this level where I have a show on NBC or whatever. He did it. He knew, he called his shots and he took them. And that's awesome. I'm always happy to see him on TV. And I wish I had been half as bold.
Now, the other huge person in terms of talking about popular people, Eminem. Now, what was your feeling on him? Because he did come on under so much criticism for, like, homophobia and anti-women in his lyrics. What was your feeling on that? In the book, you kind of say you thought he was an asshole.
Here's the thing, and this is a measure of how much things have changed through the years. Like, so John Norris and I both are at the network. We're on the air all the time. We're both gay. And we both had to interview him a ton when that second album came out, and faggot is every third word on that album. And neither of us said anything. Because neither of us, it probably didn't register. I hate that kind of speech, and I did then too, but I was so accustomed to it that it didn't stick with me at all. Like I didn't like it, so I didn't listen to it. But I didn't feel like I was in a position to be like, no, like I'm not gonna interview him. Don't have me throw to this video. Or I want to say something on the air about why those words are offensive. Like, neither of us did that. Today, of course we would do that. And I don't know if it's because culture has changed or because we're both older and more self-possessed or whatever, but like at the time I just went with the flow, and it kind of drives me nuts that I did that, because if nothing else, it would have been good TV, to say on live TV, hey, I'm actually gay, and you really say faggot a really lot of times on your new record, and I wish you wouldn't. That would have been a moment, and it maybe could have shifted, culture in some way that just going along with it to get through to the end of the day didn't do.
Yeah.
I don't, it's strange, but it just, at the time, neither of us, and we didn't even talk to each other about it. That's what the world was back then.
Can I get your hot takes on what's going on Bravo? Like, are you a fan? Like, do you actually watch The Housewives or no?
I don't really that much, no.
So here's what's funny. So I think I knew from listening to Homophilia that you actually did not watch this stuff, and yet you were cast on that Bravo show with Jerry O'Connell, like Bravo's play-by-play, and I was fascinated by this because I knew that you did not give a fuck about this stuff, and I was like, this is so interesting. Like, he's such a funny guy. It's like you were perfect, and yet you did not give a shit. How did you get that job?
Okay, so the one of the producers on it is an executive producer on Watch What Happens Live, and she and I worked together at MTV for years and years, and so we know each other pretty well, and she knows me well enough to know that I can rant on something kind of easily, right? So she was like, we're doing this Bravo Superfan show. It's going to be like Sports Center, but for the Bravo world. Do you want to come in on it? And I was like, I have to tell you up front, I know all the names of all the people just from osmosis, but I'm not as hooked on that show as a lot of other people. So one of those slots, it would be weird for me to be on it, but I would love to take the meeting. And she was like, listen, the point is to have some fresh and funny takes on it. So it's like, if the show gets picked up, maybe we'll weave in that you're sort of dipping a toe, you're learning about this world with Jerry O'Connell and whoever else we hire. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, of course I'll go in. I never say no really to an audition still. So I did a little bit of research. I watched that week's episodes of all the shows, and I asked around a little bit, and I sort of got myself a little bit more immersed in the world. And then I went in, and it's and I'm, not to gas myself up, but I'm I'm good in an audition, and I've known Jerry since forever. So he and I played well off each other, and then they brought in a whole bunch of other people, and they ended up with the four of us. So again, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't watch. But the producers were like, well, none of you watch all of it. So you're all going to be catching up on some of it. Like maybe, you don't know, maybe this one's real into, Below Deck, but doesn't follow Southern Charm. They're going to have to be brought up to speed also. So I was like, all right, that's fine. So I did. I mean, I really did do I put myself through like a housewives boot camp, and I got to know who the players are. I am not as conversant as I could be. When I went on Watch What Happens Live, I was like, please do not let this be some sort of trivia thing that I have to do because I will not know the answers.
Did you know Andy Cohen from, because both of you were moving up the ranks in your respective little genres in New York City, and coincidentally you're both from St. Louis.
We're both from St. Louis.
Yeah, in fact, aren't you both from literally the same town, Clayton, Missouri?
He's from like 2 towns over, yeah.
Which is like it's ironic. It's a coincidence.
It's wild.
Did you know him?
I'm certain that I went in for a general meeting with him or something at Bravo when I lived in New York, and then just like from just around we knew each other.
I mean, you guys are like literally like the same age, like two gay guys in TV. It's like, why aren't you married? Like, it just seems like,
I know, it's wild,
it's
right?
Perfect. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, and then I also like when again, because the producers on Watch What Happens Live are old friends of mine, when they were doing like rehearsals before that show premiered, I would be like a fake guest from time to time. So I got to know him through that. Mm-hmm. And then we started following each other on Twitter and whatever. I did a book event with him for his book in St. Louis, and
oh, cute.
Yeah, so we've known each other, for ages. And it was a strange thing because I don't know, I never had the conversation with him that I wasn't the world's greatest Real Housewives connoisseur. I don't know. We did, it was a 3-episode test run. The show ultimately did not get picked up. 2018, not the year to launch an all-male panel show about women and their substance abuse problems. It was not the world's best look, but it was a fun experience.
The last thing I want to kind of get your take on, I found it really interesting, and I was very sort of moved by how transparent you were in the book in talking about your appearance, because when you were on MTV and the subsequent years, you actually looked quite different from how you look today. Like you're very much like in shape. Like you were always a good looking guy, but you talk about this sort of like this relationship with like your looks, and you like basically a lot of the feedback you were getting in auditions or any sort of casting was that you just don't look the way what they're looking for.
Right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was a big fat guy on television, which is like admittedly it is an easier thing for a man to be, and that's something I heard a lot. It was like they would never let a woman who looks like you be on TV, which is true. Still not a great thing to be told to your face, but true and awful. But yeah, I was literally picked up off the street and given this job, and later on I moved to California and got it together, but it was, I never thought as much about my looks or my weight or whatever as I did when I was on TV and around people who are, on macrobiotic diets and, really keeping it together and all that. I felt by contrast, I felt very gross. And that it was a strange thing. It was a hit. It was like an adolescent hit to the ego that I got in my late 20s.
Although Kathy Griffin said, like on air, that you were her type.
Oh, and I think seeing who she's dated, I think she was speaking the truth, and that's great. Yes. But it's but just in general, there's a certain way that one is supposed to look on television and in movies, and I was not that, and I'd never really been as self-conscious in my life, like not even when I was like 13, as when I was 28 and on TV and overweight in a giant Chandler Bing bowling shirt,
right?
But again, then I moved to LA.
Right. What has been like you, I guess we'll end on this, like what's been your favorite thing you've done post MTV, aside from Homophilia the podcast and the book, of course. What has been the favorite project that you've done since being a VJ on MTV?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the great things about having had that job is, and I remember saying this to my parents when I got it, like when they called and said, we're going to give you a contract. My parents happened to have been in town in New York, and I was like that I might, because the money wasn't great, but I was like, that I might get sort of famous is really interesting. The thing that I'm most excited about with this job is that it will allow me to have an interesting life after it's over, because you can't do it forever. Your shelf life is 3 to 5 years. I was like 4.5, but then you have like a name. And if you create a brand for yourself, and if you work hard or whatever, you can continue hosting, but then you can also, if there are other things that you like to do, which I love to write, then it's like you're kind of already in the door, because people know who you are. It's like it assigns you a certain bit of privilege. And so that ultimately is what happened. I like 10 years ago, I hit up an editor at Vulture to say, like, who's recapping X Factor for you? Because that was about to start. And because he knew me from TV, he's like, do you want to do it? I said, sure. And so then from that editor was like, oh, this person is also a writer. So then they brought me on to Vulture. And then that editor moved to Esquire and took me to Esquire with him. And so now I'm on staff at Esquire, which is the magazine I grew up reading. And so that's my favorite thing right now, is that, 2-3 times a week, I'm, in a Slack room with some of the smartest young, 20s to 30s culture writers and style writers in the world. And they talk about ideas. And once in a blue moon, I'm like, give me that, let me write it. And I get to do that. And that's so much fun. And now I'm in print with them, and it's really exciting. And it's because of that job. Like this, what I have now is what I was hoping to get from that job. And it's still really exciting.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much. I mean, like you've had,
oh my God, thank you.
So what a life story. I mean, honestly, like anybody who is, like a fan of the 90s, or just really honestly looking for, like, the book more than anything is like this coming of age story, like you're sort of like self-acceptance, but it's also peppered with all of this pop culture stuff that we're all obsessed with. So I just really can't, and it's not like you're like, oh, can you go promote my book on your, like, I contacted you for this interview, but I was so,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, like I've loved you all my life, and the book was like one of the greatest things to like come out of this, this 4-month period of time. I'm so happy that I finally read it and now got to like meet you and sort of like expand on some of these stories.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you for reading.
So great. So where can everyone follow you online? Like, where are you most active?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Dave Holmes, and I will plug all my stuff there.
Dave, thank you so much. Guys, you can follow me, Jess XNYC. Follow Hot Takes Deep Dives, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers.